My name's Chris Penfold and I'm here today to give you some tips on packaging. Packaging is often the last thing to be thought about in a long chain of events during the development of a product, often an afterthought. However, packaging is the main component to deliver consumer convenience and something that can vastly affect satisfaction or otherwise of a product's performance. Especially true if the product or the packaging performs a dispensing role. So get it wrong at your peril, get it right and you could gain customer for life. The following tips are not a complete list but an attempt to give you a flavour of some of the main things to be considered. Thank you. Okay, tip number 1. Consider packaging as early as possible in the development process. When developing a product, the earlier you think about the packaging, the better. Sketch out some ideas, think about all the potential options. Look around your local store for competitor products and interesting packs to be transferred from other categories into your own category. There's a wealth of ideas out there. A previous good example of this was the take-up of the pump pack in the toothpaste sector after a fantastic success in the DIY sector. If possible, generate physical mock-ups long before any commercial production takes place. It gives you a much better idea of what's required at the end and what sort of issues you might have with the final pack. Possibly undertake some basic market research with the target market. What do they think of your packaging? The ideas, the formats, the colours, the shapes? You may be surprised. They may even help you find the solution. Thank you. Tip 2. Keep it as simple and cost-effective as possible. Packaging should be capable of delivering the final desired performance whilst remembering that it will have to perform many important roles and functions such as product containment, protection, preservation and transport. It also may and probably will have to carry information including warnings and performing a selling role in the marketplace or on shelf. So there's lots to think about. Initially, consider off-the-shelf components wherever possible, especially if you're on a tight budget. They'll be a lot cheaper, although you may have to order quite high volumes to get the good price point. Custom packaging is very expensive and normally requires commitment to a huge production order, something that you may not be able to agree to or afford as a fledgling start-up business. At the end of the day, the packaging simply needs to be fit for purpose in all of the above functions. So, keep it simple, keep it cost effective. Thank you. Tip number 3. Think about market position and branding. Identify who your target market are. What are their expectations in terms of product and packaging? Investigate the market and the end users to understand their needs. Try and find out where existing products fail to meet the needs and desires. Maybe you can find a niche there. Will they want something trendy and funky? If they're an older consumer, will they want something more traditional? What are the norms of your particular sector? Do you want to follow them, or do you want to break the rules and be seen as a maverick? You decide. Your packaging needs to reflect brand credentials and you need to develop these early on. So, think about market position and branding. Thank you. Tip number 4. Market supply channels. Whereabouts do you intend to sell your product? If you're going to be selling over the internet, dispatching product via the post, the branding may not be as important as a pack that needs to sell itself on the shelf in a supermarket. However, if you are selling over the internet, transit packaging and protection may be much higher up on your agenda. You don't want your product to arrive in lots of little pieces, do you? Unless, of course, it's a jigsaw puzzle. If you're selling in stores, you may need to also consider shelf height restrictions, extra point of sale display packaging and other trade requirements before the store buyers will even talk to you. So think about your market supply channels. Thank you. Tip number 5. What are the manufacturing and production constraints? How's the pack going to be filled? What about packing and assembly? If you're thinking of using a contract packer and filler to undertake this operation, try and identify them early on. If you haven't yet decided, generate a shortlist and start a dialogue. They may have specific constraints that may help you choose a pack format and save a lot of headaches. Alternatively, you may decide to hand pack first orders, and even if you are running a fairly labour-intensive, small-scale hand packing operation initially, always think of the longer-term possibilities of auto-assembly. By designing this up front, you'll save yourself a lot of headache and cost later on. So, think about manufacturing and production constraints as early on as possible. Thank you. Tip number 6, the environment. There are specific legislative producer requirements laid down by trading standards which prohibit a pack from being over-packaged, so beware. You must provide evidence that you've designed it in the optimal style, using the minimum amount of packaging possible, and in a manner that is not classed as deceptive for consumers. The law is continually evolving in terms of the environment and some material usage. Although not illegal, e.g. PVC, is frowned upon by many consumers and pressure groups. New materials are continually being developed, but amid much hype, so beware. Go and seek advice before you jump in with both feet. Think about the environment early on. Tip number 7, what protection will be required for the product within? We've covered damage to the pack from exterior elements, but what about protection from the product within? How aggressive is the product you're packing? Will it attack the pack itself? Has been known. How long will your product be on the shelf or in the supply chain before being opened? Some slow-moving consumer products can be around for up to 3 years before being used. You need to make sure that the packaging materials you use provide a sufficient barrier to the elements, mainly oxygen and moisture. Some products have stringent legislative requirements on what shelf life you can claim and proof through stability testing may be required. So, think about the protection required for the product within, not always that obvious. Thank you. Tip number 8, information and communication. What are the wording legal requirements for your sector? Do you know? What claims can you make for your products, and how will you validate those claims if you're challenged? What other messages will you want to impart to your customers? You need to check the minimum font sizes for any text and readability issues. Size and coloured text on a colour background can be very frustrating, potentially illegal due to poor choice of font and colour. What about barcoding requirements during transit and at point of sale? Ensure that you get final printed components verified with a standard barcode reader before accepting them from the printers to ensure that they decode satisfactorily. You don't want to get them out into the marketplace and find out they can't read and supermarkets send all the packaging back, do you? So, information and communication, think about it. Tip number 9. How to minimise costs, big issue. Using the development service of component suppliers can be the cheapest way to get your pack designed and mocked up prior to production. However, the downside of this is that they will subsequently inspect an order and their part price may not be the cheapest. So you could then be tied into a single supplier, pay through the nose every time you purchase your components thereafter. There's no such thing as a free lunch, remember that. So although supply development can have its place, in many instances using a specialist and independent packaging designer can provide choice and ownership, i.e. intellectual property, and the ability to take your design around a number of suppliers to get the best deal that will save you money in the long run. Think about it. How to minimise costs. Think about it early on in the process and keep it as low as possible. Tip number 10, IP protection for something novel. If you've gone to the trouble to design a pack that is distinctive and novel in terms of packaging style, shape, use of colours, branding, logos, layout, consider taking it to a patent attorney after getting some sort of protection for it. Although intellectual property or trademark protection can be expensive, attorneys normally offer some sort of free advice up front. Again, the earlier you do this, the better, because once your ideas are out in the public domain, i.e. as soon as you show them to anyone who hasn't signed the secrecy agreement, your chance of protection is much reduced. So, right up front, as soon as you've got an idea, think about IP protection or talking to an attorney. That's number 10. Final thought for you. There are many issues to consider when developing a pack and trying to navigate all of the hurdles that you will undoubtedly encounter. As an SME startup, it can be a lonely road out there with limited access to unbiased support and advice. You'll need to learn quickly and make important decisions that can either reach huge rewards for you or kill your product dead in the water before you've even launched. My advice would be to gain the support of a specialist packaging consultancy that will, in the long run, save you a huge amount of money. Thank you.